Tonight, Crimea is burning. One single strike, hundreds of millions of dollars erased. Russia's most strategic territory hit harder than ever before. Putin promised Crimea was untouchable. He promised it was permanently Russian, but this week, those promises went up in flames. A massive strike has just wiped out critical infrastructure, military assets, and Russia's sense of control, sending shockwaves through Moscow. This wasn't symbolic. This was surgical. And it may mark the beginning of the end for Russia's grip on Crimea. Here's what was hit, why it matters, and why this strike could change the entire war. Welcome back. If you want real analysis of global conflict, power struggles, and the hidden moves shaping world history, make sure you subscribe. Because what just happened in Crimea isn't just another attack. It's one of the most damaging blows Russia's suffered since the war began. For years, the peninsula was presented as an impenetrable fortress, the crown jewel of Putin's territorial ambitions. Now, that illusion is shattered. This strike goes beyond just blowing up military hardware. It strikes at the very heart of the Kremlin's narrative and its strategic posture in the Black Sea. So, let's break down exactly what happened, piece by piece. Late this week, multiple explosions rocked occupied Crimea. This wasn't a single, isolated incident. It was a coordinated wave of attacks, hitting multiple high-value targets simultaneously. According to reports and satellite imagery analysis, the targets included critical ammunition depots, massive fuel storage facilities, and, most importantly, advanced air defense systems designed to protect these very assets. We're seeing images of enormous fires raging for hours, secondary explosions ripping through storage sites, and entire military complexes reduced to smoking rubble. It's a scene of absolute devastation. Analysts are scrambling to calculate the full extent of the damage, with initial estimates putting the loss of military assets at over $300 million, and many experts believe that's a conservative number. We're talking about specialized equipment, vast quantities of fuel, and stockpiles of munitions that were meant to supply Russian forces on the southern front for months. But the real damage, the truly crippling blow, goes far beyond the monetary cost. Russia lost capabilities that cannot be easily or quickly replaced, especially under the strain of sanctions and wartime production demands. This strike was a logistical nightmare for the Russian military command. To understand why this attack is so devastating, we have to grasp why Crimea matters so much to Putin. Crimea isn't just another piece of land. For Putin, it is political oxygen. The annexation in 2014 was the centerpiece of his promise to restore Russian greatness. He sold it to the Russian people as a historic victory, proof that Russia was rising again and reclaiming its rightful place in the world. Any threat to Crimea is a direct threat to his legacy and his political survival. Militarily, Crimea is the linchpin of Russia's entire southern strategy. It's their unsinkable aircraft carrier in the Black Sea, a launchpad for Kalibr cruise missiles and airstrikes against mainland Ukraine. It's also the primary logistics artery that supplies Russian forces occupying southern Ukraine. Food, fuel, ammunition, and reinforcements, it all flows through Crimea. If you sever that artery, the Russian military position in the south becomes unsustainable. Lose Crimea, and Russia's entire southern war strategy collapses. That's why this strike, hitting the heart of its military infrastructure, hurts so deeply. It shows that the fortress is vulnerable. So, what makes this strike different from previous attacks we've seen? This wasn't random shelling or a drone strike on a minor target. This was a sophisticated, intelligence-driven operation. The precision and coordination suggest a deep understanding of Russian defenses and logistical networks. Ukraine targeted specific assets that Russia cannot afford to lose and cannot quickly replace. Think about it. They hit the air defense systems meant to protect the peninsula. Then they hit the fuel reserves needed to move troops, and then they hit the ammunition stockpiles needed to fight. It's a textbook example of systematically dismantling an enemy's capacity to wage war. Even worse for Moscow. These attacks demonstrate a catastrophic failure of Russian defenses. For all the talk of layered S-400 systems and electronic warfare, Ukraine's weapons got through and hit their marks with devastating accuracy. This raises a terrifying question for the Kremlin. If Ukraine can hit Crimea like this now, with such precision and on such a scale, what stops them from doing it again tomorrow or next week? The psychological barrier of Crimea's invincibility has been broken. Every Russian soldier and officer on that peninsula is now looking over their shoulder, wondering when the next strike will come. The physical damage is massive, but the psychological damage may prove fatal. We are already seeing the fallout online. Russian military bloggers, who are typically loyal to the Kremlin and pro-war, are panicking. Their channels are filled with anger and frustration, questioning the competence of their own military leadership and demanding answers. They know how critical these losses are. On T-Grund, there are reports of civilians and military families trying to flee the peninsula, creating traffic jams on the Kerch Bridge. Confidence in Putin's promises of security is collapsing. For a decade, residents of Crimea were told they were safe, that they were protected by the full might of the Russian military. Now, Crimea is on fire, and that promise rings hollow. This strike also sends a powerful message far beyond the borders of Ukraine and Russia. The world is watching, and this changes the strategic calculus for everyone involved. For NATO and Western allies, it has a clear demonstration that the advanced weapons they've provided are being used effectively and can turn the tide of the war. It validates the strategy of arming Ukraine to defend itself. For Russia, it's a brutal wake-up call that no territory is untouchable. The war they started is coming home, not just to border towns, but to the territory Putin values most. And for other occupied regions, this sends a message of hope. Liberation is possible. This reality will force a major reassessment in Moscow and in every capital watching this conflict unfold. So, what comes next? We can almost certainly expect some form of retaliation from Russia. Putin will likely feel pressured to respond, perhaps with another wave of missile strikes against Ukrainian cities, in an attempt to project strength and placate his hardline supporters. We should also expect escalation. But here's the crucial part. Russia will now be forced to divert precious resources to defend Crimea. They'll have to pull air defense systems, troops, and surveillance assets from other parts of the front line to try and plug the holes in Crimea as defenses. Every missile sent to protect Crimea is one that cannot be used on the Eastern Front. Every destroyed depot weakens Russia's ability to sustain its offensive operations. This strike has put the Kremlin in a strategic bind, forcing it to choose between protecting its prized possession and maintaining pressure elsewhere. This wasn't just a strike. It was a warning shot, signaling a new, more dangerous phase of the conflict. Crimea is burning, Putin's image of absolute control is cracking, and the war just entered a new phase. One where Ukraine is increasingly able to dictate the terms of engagement, even in Russia's most heavily fortified territory. If this is what Ukraine can do now, with the weapons and intelligence they currently have, imagine what comes next as their capabilities continue to grow. The future of Crimea, and perhaps the entire war, has never been more uncertain. If you want more deep analysis on global conflict, power, and history, the stories that truly define our world, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your support helps us keep bringing you these in-depth reports. Thanks for watching.